Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa. As you know, it is Mental Health Week, and we put a big focus on mental health throughout the week, as we do actually throughout the entire year. But of course, when it comes to Mental Health Week, we like to make sure we bring in different people and from different perspectives when it comes to mental health. And my next guest has a great way in really focusing on the benefits of exercise when it comes to your brain and mental health. I'm joined by Emma Scullion, a recreation therapist over at the Royal. Welcome. Great to have you here,
Thanks
Emma.
Thanks for having me.
Let's first of all talk about your role as a recreation therapist. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so at the Royal, I work in forensic outpatients. So, my role as a recreation therapist is really to kind of help my clients learn new leisure skills, increase their knowledge on things that they're interested in, to kind of help them engage in meaningful activities to improve their overall quality of life.
Yeah, and the obvious is whenever we talk about exercise, we know it's good for our health, right? Mm-hmm. We know it's good for our physical health, but how does it help our brain and our mental health?
Yeah, so as you said, there's so many physical benefits that we get from engaging in physical activity. Our bodies and our mind are very interconnected. So things that benefit our body are also going to benefit our mind. There's lots of research out there that says that exercise is super important for our mental health. When we engage in physical activity, endorphins are released in our brain. So these are very powerful chemicals, and they make us feel good. So, that feeling of, some people describe it as the runner's high. When someone goes for a run, they feel really good after. So that's one way in terms of how it can benefit our mental health.
Probably a bit of a struggle, because you mentioned endorphins, and we've heard, through a lot of research that those same endorphins are, get lifted when we look at our phone and we're mm-hmm. on social media and we get a like, or if we're perhaps substance abuse again, mm-hmm. Things like that. Have we seen, or do you see in research that they've done that some of the mental health issues that we're having is because of those as well, being those mm-hmm. different kinds mm-hmm. of distractions rather than exercise and being active? Yeah,
that's a good point. I think in today's society we have access to lots of technology. So yeah, absolutely. I think that it can technology can negatively affect our mental health, and then absolutely take away from engaging in these physical activities, for sure.
Let's talk about short-term benefits to exercise with our mental health first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know for myself, I like to work out in the morning. I think because it starts my day off on a great note. I think as well it increases my motivation. So, if you start your day off on a great note, engage in exercise, it also help with productivity throughout your day. So that's also, of course, going to improve your mental health. It can reduce our stress, our anxiety, depression. Also a big one too is when we exercise with other people. We're social beings, so it's really important to interact with others. That's a few. There's obviously a bunch, but that's a few.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, there are obviously longer term benefits as well. Let's talk about some of those long term benefits.
Yeah, I think overall, just, it can improve our quality of life. Like I mentioned before, it's super important that we're engaging in meaningful activities in our free time. As I mentioned, that's kind of my role as a recreation therapist, is to help my clients figure out meaningful activities that they can do in their free time. So, I think that when we engage in meaningful activities, like I mentioned, it'll absolutely improve our mental health. Yeah.
Can you, is this used in parallel then with other treatments as well?
Yeah, for sure. So pharmacotherapy, so medication, as well as psychotherapy, I think exercise should be a component in everyone's recovery journey. So absolutely can be incorporated in all kinds of different types of therapy.
And then we all have different physical abilities, right? So when a client comes to you, what is that process like? How do you figure out what the best path is for that person, mm-hmm. that patient?
Yeah, so exercise can be done. It doesn't matter your fitness level, your age. I think it's just super important to try to recognize kind of what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, let's say. So it doesn't have to be going to the gym and doing strength training per se. It can be even just getting outside for a walk, for 10 minutes, or yoga, stretching. Even when we do like chores around our house, like that could be an example of a physical activity. So I think when I meet with a client, I'm just really trying to understand, what do they enjoy doing? What are their strengths? Yeah.
I think that, the pandemic is fascinating to look at too, because on one hand, if I looked into my neighborhood during the pandemic when we were in lockdown, I saw more people outside on their bikes and playing. Basketball nets were going up. People were buying like canoes and kayaks. We live just across the river, but. Did we see the opposite side of that, where people were, more isolated and not doing anything?
During COVID?
The pandemic?
Yeah, when we were in lockdown. Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely a really hard time for a lot of people. I know for myself, like for sure, like you mentioned, a lot of people were outside, but it was really challenging when like gyms were closed, let's say, or, if you're used to doing exercise with other people, I know for myself, there was a time period where I lost motivation to want to engage in physical activity, right? So yeah, it was definitely very challenging for sure.
No, you just reminded me of times during that lockdown where we went in. I think a lot of us went into that hibernation mode where we just completely lost. Well, it was a confusing time as well, right? And when you're confused, you try to distract yourself, and many of us distracted ourselves with anything but exercise. Emma, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much
for having me.
And I'm going to end this too with a big thanks to the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre, who has sent us so many fantastic people throughout this week to discuss Mental Health Week. So a big thanks to everyone there. We'll be right back after this.